coming from One News. Lucy, what are you watching? Big news.
Ang storya ngayon, mamili ka kung anong gusto mo.
Dropping the ball.
Dropping the ball, oo nga. Pero siyempre, denial yun. Yun yung number one. Tapos,
yung TRB.
Well, of course, yung tsaka, of course, yung surge nga na pinangangambahan, diba? This December. Tapos, and yet, yung, going back to the who dropped the ball, sabi ni President Duterte, walang lapse. Walang lapse. Mukhang wala naman siyang nakikitang lapse on the part of Health Secretary Duque.
Pero pinag-explain daw, di ba? Sabi ni spokesman Harry Roque. Pinag-explain daw. Pero si Duque Waldes na tinuturo niya na si Duque nga na ibis na malaking issue na from January na move tayo to July. Diba?
Right. Yes. Hindi, tsaka inumpisahan na nila yung July. Diba? Pero yung negotiations, November lang ginawa. Diba? So, kumbaga, naunahan na ng kung sino-sino at kung meron mang negotiation ng November, no? Because that's the claim of Health Secretary Duque. So, yun pa rin yung pinakamalaki.
Yes, 10 million, sayang, ano?
Yeah, sayang din yun, di ba? Tapos, as it stands now, mukhang Sinovac nga yung mauna, no?
Yes, talaga
yes, and this should come out second quarter of next year.
Daw. Baka daw makakaya ng March, di ba?
March daw darating, pero syempre yung distribution niya, logistics, mga tipong afterwards pa. Siguro malamang yan, mga May, no? To be sure, May.
Mga from the US daw, sa kanyang AstraZeneca yan, kinukuha nila. Ewan ko naman kung bakit napatagal, ano? May pa. May to July. Kala ko may emergency.
Pero baka logistics din, di ba? I don't know.
Kaya AstraZeneca naman yung, di ba? Stable daw yun. Well, we'll
Sabi
see.
nga nila, hindi nga kailangan masyado ng refrigeration, di ba? Do you remember? Parang powder form yun, di ba?
Kahit yung Moderna, di ba? Mas stable na tayo Moderna. Although sinasabi nila, apart from that, medyo mag-iiba tayo ng topic ngayon, di ba? Medyo...
malaking storya rin yun, yung TRB. At saka yung nangyayari ngayon sa mga tollways.
Well, at least naayos tayo yung tollways. Pag-uusapan natin yung mamaya. But yung introduction natin, siguro ipasok na natin yung natin.
Sige, game.
Medyo iba yung natin, medyo iba yung topic natin. Para
natin yung women power.
Women power nga. So, joining us tonight to talk about the Army's efforts to promote gender and development among the ranks of the armed forces is Adjutant General Maxima Ignacio. Good evening, General.
Good evening, General.
Wow.
General.
Hi, and Miss Lucy.
Hi, ma'am.
Usually,
Ma'am General.
Oo nga Usually, ma'am, mga namimit naming babaeng general nasa health sector ng AFP Kayo talaga, siguro you can describe to us yung trabaho ninyo, being a female general.
Well, actually, Miss Lucy, in the AFP, dahil ang sabi ninyo, ang mga karaniwan na nagiging general na babae ay yung mga nasa health service.
Yes.
It's really, I'm actually the second woman general na line officer. The first one was Brigadier General Ramon Ago. That was in 2009, the first one. And then I was promoted in 2018. And then 3 others followed suit in 2019 and 2020. So ngayon po, 4 na po kami na women general na nasa line, nasa regular line. And then meron pa po tayong dalawang female general, the chief of the nurse corps and the chief of the dental service.
So,
yun
pwede
na nga, mga nasayang service.
Kung,
Yeah.
paki-explain lang sa viewer natin, ano po yung ginagawa ng Adjutant General?
Yes, the Adjutant General is the one in charge of the administrative matters concerning the armed forces of the Philippines. Yung pong lahat ng mga management ng regarding the administrative matters, yun po ang hinahawakan ng Adjutant General. From recruitment, recording, safekeeping of the records, publication of orders, and other special documents of the armed forces, kami po ang gumagawa niyan. Kami din po ang nag-handle ng management ng ating technical and administrative service. Ito po yung pong administration ng ating mga doktor, mga nurses, mga abogado, pare, at yung pong mga dentist. Yan po yung, at ang core professor. Yan po ang trabaho ng Adjutant General. In addition to our traditional job of publishing these documents, the general orders, special orders, and other important documents of the armed forces. Ganon din po, kami din po ang nag-handle ng administration ng ating civilian human resource.
Ma'am, what does it take to be a female soldier, really, and especially a female general? Did you have to go through the same military training? Were you expected to have the same warfare skills as your male counterparts in the military? How was it to rise up the ranks? What did you have to go through?
Yes, Ms. Lucci. I also underwent the same training as the male counterparts. I started training with male counterparts in 1989 when I joined the officer candidate school as an officer candidate. And then after graduation, after just a year into the service as a second lieutenant, I joined the Philippine Air Force Flying School as a student officer, and I trained as a pilot. Actually, I am one of the first two female graduates of the Philippine Air Force Flying School. So, during the time, wala pa pong mga lalaki wala pang mga babae na tinitrain as a pilot in the Air Force. So, wala pong special treatment.
So,
Pero ako po, General. Ako po, aatrasan ko pa yung tanong, Lucci, wala pa kayo sa militar. This is my question. Why the military? Why did you have it in your mind that you wanted to join the military?
Well, actually, napakababaw nga po ng dahilan ko sa pagpasok dati sa military. Gusto ko lang pong isuot yung uniforme ng militar. Nagagandahan po ako dun sa uniform ng ating armed forces. And ako po ay lumaki din ng aking mga kapatid na lalaki, dalawa po sila. Sila po ay nasa military. At siguro po yung greatest influencer bakit po ako nag-join ng military. And then when I already in the service, I realized na the military is really something else.
So, kumusta ho? Yeah. Kumusta ho?
Of course,
Go ahead, Robbie. You first.
Hindi, of course, tinatanong po namin to. Hindi naman po pagkakaila. No? Tinatanong namin to because bihira nga makita ang babae sa militar, much less rising to the rank of general. What would you say to Filipino women ngayon, having with your career, knowing what you know about the military life? What would you say to the young Filipinas of today?
Well, Mr. Roby, I would say that the military is not just kind of job. It's a vocation. It's really a vocation because you will be in service of your of your country, and I am really inviting and uh, encouraging our young women to see for themselves what it is in the military. Napakaganda po na kayo ay maranasan ang buhay. Mahirap po. Siyempre, mahirap ang buhay sa armed forces dahil kakaiba po ang ating ginagawa dito. It is not an ordinary job na 8 to 5, 24 hours po, nandito tayo. But the feeling of contentment and fulfillment, the feeling of satisfaction that you are serving your country and your people.
Pero pantay-pantay ba ang pagtrato dyan ng babae at saka lalaki dyan sa military? Kayo ba, are you also expected to do heavy lifting the same way that the males do? Or merong mga bagay na parang excuse na kayo, hindi nyo kailangan gawin yan? May ganun ba?
Yeah, Miss Lucy, pagdating sa trabaho, pare-parehas siya. But there are instances na merong hindi ginagawa ng mga babae. For instance, doon po sa aming physical fitness test, mas mababa po ang passing rate ng babae dahil po sa ating physiological difference sa mga lalaki. Yun po, isang bagay po yun. But in all other matters, in all other tasks, pare-parehas lang po. Kung anong binibigay sa mga lalaki, binibigay din po sa mga babae. At ngayon nga po, napakalawak na po ng pinapasukan ng ating mga kababaihang sundalo. Kahit po doon sa combat duties, hindi na po pinagbabawal ngayon. As long as you're qualified, you have the skills, you can be assigned in a combat duty. Noong pong araw, ang ating pong mga kababaihan ay talagang limited po doon sa administrative matters, administrative tasks. Noong pong araw, ganun po. Pero ngayon po, maraming din po tayong mga battalion commanders na babae andun po sa field. Marami na po tayong mga piloto na nasa combat duties. Marami na po tayong mga kababaihan na nagkukumand ng barko. Yan po. So very napakalaki na po ng pinagbago ng pagtingin sa ating mga kababaihan sa armed forces.
Pero General, anong tingin yung gender-related element that women can bring into the AFP? Kasi may ang controversy sa AFP kapareho sa police yung respect for human rights, for example. Mas maaasahan ba natin, meron bang gender-related element doon na mas marerespeto ng mga babae ang human rights, civil liberties? Meron bang ganong element ba?
Opo, Miss Ami. Ang ating pong, hindi lang po naman itong mga kababaihan ang nagre-respeto sa ating human rights. Ang buong kasundaluhan po ng armed forces ay nagre-respeto at malakas po ang aming pagtingin sa ating human rights. Actually, yan po ang isa sa tinututukan ng ating liderato na ang ating pong mga kasundaluhan, mababae man o malalaki, ay magkaroon ng mataas na pagtingin sa human rights. So,
mas may tendency ba yung mga babae na mag-respect being mothers, for example? Yun ang sinasabi ng mga tao na kapag babae, mas madali daw magrespeto sa human rights. Tama ba yun? Can you sense that in service?
Yeah, Miss Abby, ang tingin ko dyan, this is my personal view, no? Na yan individual differences. kay babae, kay lalaki, merong mataas ang tingin sa human rights at merong hindi gaanong mataas ang pagtingin sa human rights. So, kagaya nga nung sabi ko kanina, ang ating armed forces, ang inyong armed forces, ay mataas ang pagtingin sa human rights, kay babae man kami, kay lalaki. At being nanay, siguro, ang nagtutuon na elemento o yung pagiging naturally nurturer natin bilang mga kababaihan.
Kaya nga po na sabi nyo, sa trabaho, pantay-pantay, values are the same. Ang tanong ko naman, what about style? May iba ba sa leadership style ang kababaihan sa lalaki? And for that matter, I wanted to ask you, tell us a story. Meron ba mga sitwasyon that made you go, yan nga ba sinasabi natin, kaya kailangan dagdagan ng kababaihan sa military? What are those situations that made you think, this is a situation where having more women in the military really helps?
Yeah, Robbie, ganito. There are instances na syempre puro karamihan mga lalaki itong ating mga leaders, no, ng AFP. Pag mayroong mga babae na kasama sa, halimbawa, may mga gatherings, may mga meetings, they tend to soften. Pag may mga kababaihan na present, they tend to, even the way they talk together. Sabi nga nila, sila din ang nagsasabi na pag may mga babae na kasama sa mga gatherings or mga meetings, lalo na pag medyo mabigat ang usapan, pagka may mga babaeng kasama, sabi nila, medyo nagsusopen sila.
Ma'am, wala namang mga case ng sexual harassment dyan. Dahil nga, di hamak naman na mas maraming lalaki kesa sa babae sa military, no? Nagkakaroon din ba ng mga ganong kaso ng sexual harassment? Are there more of them in the military, considering the discrepancy in numbers, than say in the private sector or in any ordinary company?
Yeah, Ms. Lucci, there are cases. Hindi naman kami naiiba masyado sa ibang organisasyon at lalo nga sabi mo, mas marami ang kalalakihan. Merong mga cases pero they are very few. Hindi siya ganun karami. At dahil nga marami kaming mga activities that focus on gender and development, equal opportunities, equal treatment, siguro masyadong nararamdaman niya ng aming mga kasamahang kalalakihan. Kaya very cautious sila na makagawa ng mga bagay na magdudulot ng hindi kasi sa amin pagka meron kang kaso agad yan. Kasuhan agad. In place ang aming mga system. So pagka meron agad konting report, kaso agad yan. At hinahandle ka agad yan ng aming Provo Marshal, ng aming Inspector General. So marami kaming system na in place na nagpiprevent para yung mga cases of sexual harassment and the like are minimized and properly managed.
General, the AFP, paano naman yung commander-in-chief niya is being criticized? Misogynist daw siya, saka mahilig siya ng mga green jokes. Naapektuhan ba kayo doon, the women in the AFP? Saka is it rubbing off yung attitude na yon sa mga kalalakihan ng mga sundalo?
Well, Ms. Abby, kahit na sinasabihan nila ng ating Pangulo, ang ating Commander-in-Chief, ay mahilig gumawa ng mga green jokes. But we, women in the military, really feel his admiration and a great concern to the members of the armed forces. Feel namin yun yung pagmamahal niya sa amin. Kaya kahit ba sabihin nila na merong ganito, we're not affected. Kasi ganito po kita namin kung paano niya pinapahalagahan ang kanyang mga kasundalo. Ang buong process kay babae o lalaki. Kaya nga po, masaya din po kami dahil despite sa mga sinasabing gano'n, ang ating pong armed forces, it still receives the number one position in the trust rating of all government agencies.
Ma'am, matanong ko lang po. Sa pamilya niyo ba, kayo po ba ang general doon o paano si...
Pagdating sa aming bahay, hindi na po ako general. Misis na po ako. Hindi niyo po na itatanong kay husband. Is a former military personnel din. Siya po ay first captain nang siya po ay lumabas sa serbisyo. Siya po ay nag-join sa airline, sa commercial airline.
I see. Ano po yun? By choice po ba yun? Para hindi kayo nagko-compete sa isa't isa habang kayo nasa Air Force or talagang naisip na mas
it's economic. We used to have very, hindi naman po napakataas ng aming sweldo sa pagiging militar noong araw. It only really increased ng nakita po namin yung na-receive namin yung unprecedented increase when President Duterte became the president. So, noong pong araw, bababa pa po ang aming sahod at gusto namin po na mabigyan ng talagang magandang sinabukasan ng aming mga anak. Kaya po kami nagdesisyon na kailangan may isa pong nagsiservisyo at ako po yun. At may isang kumikita, yung pong aking husband. So, yun po
babalikan ko lang yung tanong kanina ni Ami and to which you answered, pagka pumasok kayo sa yung babaeng opisyal, pagka pumasok sa meeting, medyo kumakalma yung ibang mga general. And I know we're dealing with stereotypes here. No? We're dealing with stereotypes, not just sa women, pati sa mga lalaki. But in those moments, pagka kumalma, no, and nag-soften, as you said, yung mga lalaking generals and so on, do you think that the ultimate effect is that it allows the leadership of our military to consider options na hindi nila kaagad nakikita, whereas if it were a purely male-dominated meeting?
Robbie, ganito po. Yung mga instances na medyo mainit po yung pinag-uusapan at pagka yung mga babae ay naroon at medyo kalmado din, relax na nagiging relax ang atmosphere, mas ang nagiging, actually hindi lang po ito sa military o sa AFP Ito po ay findings naman sa buong mundo. Kahit nga po sa United Nations, lagi po nilang binabanggit yan, na kailangan natin ng mga kasamang babae sa mga meeting, mga negotiation, dahil ang babae ay nagsusopen ng atmosphere at tayo po ay nasa relaxed mode na nag-iisip, hindi po tayo stressful o hindi mainit ang ating ulo, mas nakakapag-isip tayo ng mas maganda. So it just follows yung kung ganoon 5 days na ganoon din po sa military.
Paano po mapapawi ang mga agam-agam ng mga kababaihan na pag pumasok sila sa military ay hindi sila matatrato ng masama or hindi nila kailangan maging for lack of a better word, parang Amazona or sabi nga nila parang tomboy, no? Yun yung old word for that. How can you encourage them to join the military and embark on a military career and that there's a future for them there?
Miss Lucy, ang masasabi ko tungkol dito sa ating mga kababaihan, sa ating mga young Filipinas, na na merong agam-agam na ang AFP, pag ikaw ay babae, pag pumasok ka, mapapariwala ka. At hindi maganda ang iyong papasukan. If you will see me, I became a general. I was able to take take advantage of many of career opportunities. Dito po sa Armed Forces, naranasan na makapunta ng ibang lugar, ibang bansa, iba-ibang lugar sa Pilipinas, at makahalubilo, magkaroon ng chance na makahalubilo ang iba't ibang klase ng tao. So, sa ating mga kababaihan, sa mga young women natin, there are a lot of opportunities in the armed forces. Marami kayong matututunan, marami kayong malalaman dito at ma-experience ng mga bagay na hindi ninyo mararanasan kung kayo ay papasok sa isang profesyon na hindi sa military. Yun po ang kaibahan. Yun ang something different in the armed forces sa mga kababaihan. Kung kayo ay dito papasok, kung kayo ay dito magiging, actually hindi nga employed ang tawag ko dito. Ito ay serbisyo, ito ay bokasyon. So if you really want to serve our country, you want to serve our kababayan, you want to serve our motherland, you join the armed forces. Ito yung, at pagdating dito, pag pumasok ka, ito ay isang pamilya. Ito ay isang malaking pamilya ng armed forces. Hindi ka dito magiging isang individual lang. Kundi lagi kami dito ay kumikilos bilang isang team. Lagi kami dito ay kumikilos bilang isa. At napakasarap ng mga experiences. Napakaganda ng mga experience. Ako nga sabi ko, if I will go back to my youth and will be asked, what I would like to be? I would go the same path. I would still join. I will still choose joining the armed forces.
Ay, in general, kitang-kita naman po ng mga tao how fulfilled you are. Everybody, I think, can see what kind of a model they have in you. So pagkatapos, all throughout the military, beyond you, as you said, marami na po mga battalion commanders. There are women commanding ships. But every time mag-PPMA graduation, parang babae parati ang top graduate. I mean, despite all of that, what still needs to change, do you think, when it comes to having more women and having a place for women in our military? What else needs to improve?
Siguro, Robbie, ganito apektado kasi tayo ng ating kultura. Ang ating kultura, nandun pa rin meron pa rin, may bahid pa rin na yung mga babae is better sila na hindi sa male-dominated profession. But if you are really good, if you do well, if you are working really really good in your job, nakikita naman yan ng liderato. Nakikita yan, and you will be given a chance. You will be, ganito ang promotion naman, ang designation, hindi naman dahil sa pagiging babae o pagiging lalaki. It's what you are showing, what you are doing. If you are doing good, merit po kasi ang ating basis sa pagpupromote. So, kahit po babae, kahit lalaki, yan na po yung nakikita namin ngayon. Kahit babae ka, kahit lalaki ka, if you are doing good, mabibigyan ka ng opportunity. You will be promoted even ahead of your contemporaries.
Okay.
So, we're changing and we're improving. We're really developing.
Okay, ladies, you want to try something different? Ayan po siya, General. Baka maging General kayo. Brigadier General Maxima Ignacio, the Adjutant General of the AFP. Thank you po for joining the Chiefs.
Salamat po, ma'am. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po.
Batiin ko lang ang ating Armed Forces of the Philippines. Kasi po, ito very timely yung ating pag-uusap ngayon because on December 21, we will be celebrating the 85-year anniversary of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. So, kunin ko na rin po ang opportunity na ito na pasalamatan ang ating mga kababayan, ang ating mga kasamahan sa Armed Forces at sa pagtangkilik sa inyong Armed Forces of the Philippines. Maraming salamat po at patuloy po sana ninyong pagtiwalaan ang inyong Armed Forces.
Okay.
All right.
So thank you.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much.
Salamat po.
Yes, we'll just pause for a break. Don't go away. We'll be back.
Welcome back. The chief joining us now is Attorney Romulo Quimbo, Chief Communication Officer of the Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation. Good evening, Attorney Quimbo.
Good evening. Good evening, Robbie. Good
Okay.
evening, Lucy. Good evening, Ami. How are you?
Attorney, ano ba? All is well at NLEX. May lifting na ng suspension. What exactly does that mean?
Well, we resumed toll collection. The business permit suspension has been lifted as of 12:01 today, and we started toll collection already. And we have agreed to implement some of the proposed changes in the tolling system or the tolling policy, if I may say so, that Mayor Gatchalian so hardly pushed. So we're good. We're implementing a so-called barrier-less operation or arrangement in Valenzuela.
Okay, so ano yung changes? Ano yung a quick outline of the changes that you're starting to implement?
Opo. Well, the most important thing is that over the past few weeks, past 10 days where there was a toll holiday, the motorists will recall that the so-called barrier, let me be technical here, it's not actually a barrier, it's a boom. It's a boom that goes up and down every time a vehicle goes past the barrier. The entire thing is the barrier, and you have many toll lanes, and there's the boom. So it's been a boomless 10 days for the exactly, and it has been during the toll holiday, and of course, no toll collection could take place. But with the new arrangement, adopting the boomless or barrierless arrangement, we resume toll collection today. And for us, it's a very important step. We'd like to see to it that it's going to work. And we have seen also the wisdom of from the customer's point of view on how this might work in the future.
So boomless collection will be applied in all your toll booths na. Is this going to be a permanent thing already? Or do you have to upgrade machine equipment para completely boomless na? Everyone.
No, the booms are there. Actually, the booms are in the RFID lanes. But it took some time for us to understand that it's important also to look at it from the customer's point of view. If we are going to implement faster traffic, no queues at all, then maybe this is one way. But we also realize that when we remove the installation of RFID stickers in the toll lanes, we also remove the reloading in the actual toll gates, then actually traffic moved faster.
Okay.
We also,
Okay. So can you explain exactly the system that we are to expect? So wala nang boom, meaning the booms are now raised
That's right.
permanently during certain hours, right?
Yes,
Tama
it's a
ba?
window
And then,
from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's correct.
right. And then how do you collect during that time? How does that register if you're going to remove that stickers? How does it work exactly?
Well, let me explain a little bit. The lane has booms, and the booms basically serve as a gate, in which case the RFID system in every lane tracks, records every transaction every time a vehicle passes. So the charging is done electronically. There's a scanner. The scanner looks at your sticker in your car and then records the transaction and charges you accordingly. So the point is, with the boom up or with the barrier up, the charging continues. But this time, the customer needs to stop. They just go
I
through
guess,
the...
again, attorney, I'll ask you from the other side kasi I think yung question dito is, ako, first time ako nagdaan sa NLEX with my RFID. Praning ka eh. Di ba? First time. Kasi that's the interface. Eh. Pagka bumukas yun, then you know, okay, my RFID works. Di ba? Pagkatapos magfa-flash pa doon kung magkano yung load mo. Di ba? Now, without that interface to signal to you that everything's okay, how do I know that I was charged properly? How do I know? So, malinaw, makakadaan lang ako, di ba? But what's the interface that signals to me that everything's okay?
Well, when the vehicle passes through the gate, the boom is up, right? But the scanner continues to record your transaction because it's an RFID technology. So he tracks you as you pass the toll gate, and then he charges you accordingly. Okay, how will you know? Well, you go into your app. Your app contains the record of the transaction. In fact, this realization came about, I think, from Mayor Gatchalian's point of view, during the holiday, when the booms were up and people continued to pass, quote-unquote, toll-free, there was one toll lane in Mindanao Avenue, lane number 4, if I'm not mistaken, which we inadvertently forgot or inadvertently did not switch off. In other words, the system was on, it continued to track, it continued to detect, record, and charge, and later on it appeared in the accounts in the cell phones. So it was really proof that the system is working. So from that, we sort of proceeded to, okay, why don't we do it in Valenzuela? Because, you know, the strategic location, etc., and the traffic profile. So on that basis, that was the last issue that we had to resolve. And we said, okay, let's give it a go. And we think it's going to work.
So we don't
Quick follow-up.
Na-intriga ako kasi noon pa namin naiisip yun, Attorney Quimbo, kaming mga commuter, na bakit ba kasi may boom pa? Ba't hindi na lang ito mare-record? Bakit nga ba hindi naisip yun noon? You know, before, I'll just tell you, we thought that you really had to slow down to give the machine time to read your sticker. So it appears now you're saying, I can just zoom through it and I will be charged. Wala naman palang problema. So, ba't hindi naisip yun?
Hindi, naisip naman yun. Ganito rin naman ang situation. Ano? Remember, when we started all this RFID 100 program, this cashless, you had a market that was 30% RFID. 70% were using cash. So sobrang laki ng ratio. In other words, from a toll collection point of view itself, then you really have to have that boom closed, okay, or boom down, or barrier down, fine. But as we progress, because of the cashless program, then you now see the potential for looking at it from a different perspective. Tama ka, you sort of slow down, you need to be identified, tagged, detected, etc. But in a conventional tolling system, the barrier, which is really the gate with many doors, serves also a road safety feature. It's the first interface between the toll operator and the vehicle and the customer who is entering a high-speed expressway. It's not your EDSA. It's not your Aguilar Street or something like that. It's not your University Avenue. But the first instance or the first contact between the operator and the motorist from a safety point of view, you are able to identify non-roadworthy vehicles, dilapidated cars, cars with broken headlights, broken taillights, broken windshields, drivers with no seat belts, overloaded trucks, excessively loaded.
Potential road hazards.
Exactly.
Tatanggalin nyo na yung, tatanggalin nyo na ba permanently o ibabalik din later? Saka do we have to slow down ngayon? Habang wala pa, habang nakataas yung mga boom na yan, do vehicles still have to slow down?
You have to slow down. It's a road safety issue. You have to slow down.
Okay. Atty,
You have to slow down.
Atty, tanongin ko lang para sa mga pasaway ko na classmate, di ba? Ngayon, bukas na ngayon yung mga boom, bukas na yung ano. So does that mean if I zoom through it, makakalusot ako na wala akong RFID, and if kung may mga has na, uy, pare, bukas daw, libre raw ang NLEX ngayon, wala nang maninita. What awaits the people who think that they can now pass through NLEX without an RFID?
Okay, so yung boom up na yun or barrier up system or barrierless operation is on a window lang, di ba? 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Anytime naman kung wala kang RFID, may cash lane eh. So the cash lane, katabi naman nasa kanan lang yung cash lane. So it's okay for those people just getting their money's worth, then it's okay. You don't have an RFID, just go to the cash lane. It's okay. If you have an RFID, then you go through the barrierless thing, right? Kung wala kang RFID, dumaan ka sa dumaan ka sa barrierless RFID, then technically it's a violation. Technically it's a violation. So it's going to be a special operation that Mayor Gatchalian and our team agreed to develop a protocol, how to manage those friends of yours who are thinking differently.
Nag-iisip na.
So it's okay. Mag-isip na kayo, no problem. But we will have to obviously install more cameras, we have to install more tracking devices, and then obviously maybe apprehend in the near future with a hefty fine.
May pagtutuos pa rin.
So
palagi may pagtutuwas palagi.
Nag-umpisa pa lang actually yung resolution. But anyway, we want to discuss more of this, but we've run out of time. We'd like to thank you, Attorney Romulo Quimbo of the Metro Pacific Tollways. Thank you for joining the Chiefs. And now
Salamat, Attorney.
Salamat po sa pagkakataon ulit. Thank you po.
And I would like to move on to a different topic, and we'd like to welcome another lawyer, Gilbert Andres, the Deputy Executive Director of CenterLaw. Good evening, Attorney.
Good evening to the Chiefs, Luchi, Ami, and Robbie.
Welcome po. Pag-uusapan natin yung isa pang mainit na issue ngayon, the ICC statement on the situation, the human rights situation in the Philippines. They think there's basis to, hindi pa naman sigurado, no? But they might proceed with the investigation for crimes against humanity dito sa Pilipinas in the conduct of the drug war. Ano po yung, sa tingin nyo, ano ba yan? May patutunguhan ba yan? Kasi sinasabi ng government wala nang jurisdiction sa amin ng ICC. You think may patutunguhan siya?
Well, we are actually optimistic. At the same time, we're cautious. So, first, why are we very optimistic? Because in fact, when the Office of the Prosecutor stated that there's reasonable basis to believe that crimes against humanity have been committed, it's actually a standard in the Rome Statute that will trigger the application of a preliminary investigation. So in a sense, the pieces of evidence, the information available before the Office of the Prosecutor means that there's actually already a fulfillment of a substantive standard for it to apply for a preliminary investigation. Now, why are we cautious? Because in fact, in the last paragraph concerning the Philippines, there was a paragraph there that says that the Office of the Prosecutor will still wait until the first half of 2021 to decide whether or not they will pursue application for investigation. But we can say that there already is 1 foot on the door. So
Yeah, but Attorney, when you say application for investigation, that application is filed with whom?
it's filed by the OTP with the pretrial chamber, so it's still with the ICC. So
Okay.
it will formally ask for an authority to investigate, because as of this moment, there's actually no power yet by the OTP
Yeah.
to have an investigation.
But does the investigation have to take place and occur within our territory in the country? And for that matter, do they need permission from government? What are the protocols there?
Okay, so there are actually two questions there, Robbie. So first is, do they have to make an investigation here in the Philippines? Well, for all practical reasons, since the pieces of evidence will have to be here in the Philippines, those are documents, those are people, those are witnesses, then there's really a logistical need for officers from the OTP to come here in the Philippines. Secondly, that question as to whether or not the Philippines may or may not cooperate, actually, just based on the Rome Statute in Article 127, the Philippines actually has that obligation to cooperate with the investigation. It's irrelevant whether or not we're still a party to the ICC. There's what we call a residual obligation to still fulfill that obligation to cooperate with the investigation.
When you say reasonable basis, is this equivalent to probable cause, or your investigation will be the search for that probable cause? I mean, I'm just trying to liken it to the regular, trials or hearings or procedures in a court of law. And can you describe also how the hearings will go? Will you be summoning witnesses also from here? Will it be heard by a jury? How does that go exactly in the ICC?
Yes, with respect to reasonable basis, this is actually a technical term. In fact, the pretrial chamber of the ICC has defined it as there exists a sensible or reasonable justification for a belief that a crime falling within the jurisdiction of the court has been or is being committed. So that's the technical definition. Now, in fact, if we compare it with our domestic concept of probable cause for arrest warrants, search warrants, it's almost the same, because probable cause is such facts or circumstances that will lead a reasonable mind to believe that a crime has been committed. So it's almost synonymous. Reasonable basis is almost synonymous to probable cause. Now, as to how this will be operationalized, so as of now, there's preliminary examination. Now, when the OTP will find that it will apply with the pretrial chamber for a authority for preliminary investigation, then it will have to wait for the decision of the pretrial chamber. And when the pretrial chamber already makes a decision, then the officers of the office of the prosecutor will actually send people on the ground here in the Philippines, or it may receive also pieces of evidence there in The Hague. And then it will actually gather pieces of evidence. So that's testimonial, that's documentary, that's electronic evidence. And it will have also to present it to the pretrial chamber so that it can apply for a summons or an indictment.
Okay. What is the time frame for all of that? I mean, will it be reasonably finished before the term of the president? And will it be the president, in effect, that's going to face possible conviction? Ganun ba yun? Or is it the government? When you say government, is that the president? What kind of punitive measures are going to be imposed? I mean, what sanctions are we talking about?
Okay.
If found guilty.
As to the first question, Luci, so time frame, in fact, we can already see it in the report in the last paragraph that the Office of the Prosecutor has already set the first half of 2021 some sort of a deadline, whether or not it will ask actually for authority from the pretrial chamber. So we have until June of 2021 to know whether or not it will apply for that authority. Now, after beyond that, well, actually, it can still move beyond that if there are actually exigent circumstances, such as the worsening pandemic, for example. But I think it's reasonable now to expect that the latest will be June 2021, when we will know whether or not there's a application for preliminary investigation. Now, as to the time frame for the pretrial chamber to decide, so I think it's reasonable to think of 1 to 2 years, but it can even be 11 years. It actually happened with a specific country, Afghanistan. In fact, it took about 11 years before there was a decision by the pretrial chamber that there will be no authority to investigate. That's why they even appealed it, and it just came out this March of 2020 that they actually overturned. The appeals chamber of the ICC overturned the pretrial chamber decision. So it will take anywhere from 1 to 11 years.
Attorney, what are the consequences if you are a person indicted before the ICC? What can happen to you?
So first, the ICC will have to take personal jurisdiction. So there will be a arrest of that person.
Who will carry out the arrest? Which unit will carry out the arrest?
Okay, this is the tricky part, because it means that the arrest will be implemented in the state party's territory, and that's the Philippines.
Yes.
So in fact, it will be the Philippine officers who will arrest, in a sense.
You are deputized. You are deputized by the UN because the UN has its own team, di ba? To carry out these things.
But
kailangan pala sarili natin.
Oh, for this case, really, the ICC doesn't really have what we call maybe marshals. They don't really have that people who will arrest. So they will have to, in a sense, deputize, in effect. And this deputization is really related to the state party's obligation to actually cooperate with the investigation. So in fact, they will invoke Article 127 of the Rome Statute, that even though we are not a state party, we still have that residual obligation to cooperate even in the arrest of any person.
But assuming a future administration, or whether it's the incumbent of a future administration is uncooperative, there is no scenario where that arrest will take place outside of the country.
Well, there may be a scenario, for example, it's in the territory of another state party. That's actually possible. In fact, that has been the interplay with respect to the indictment against the Sudanese leader, al-Bashir. So whether or not the African Union is willing to actually arrest him. So in fact, they stated they're not willing. So it actually took a lot of years before he was arrested eventually.
In another country.
Now, speaking of other countries, I asked my question earlier about kailangan bang dito yung investigation. As you said, there are very logical reasons why it has to be here. The evidence is here, but the witnesses are here as well. But the witnesses can be outside. Is that an option? Is that a possibility?
Well, that's also a possibility. In fact, there are certain modes in the ICC Rome Statute for the OTP to receive pieces of evidence. In fact, witnesses can even go to The Hague. So there are actually creative means provided for in the ICC Rome Statute for the OTP to receive those pieces of evidence.
So that means that even if the government were not to allow an investigator to come into the country, certain parts of the investigation can theoretically happen outside the country?
Yes, as long as the witnesses are there, the pieces of document, electronic evidence are available with them.
Can the ICC order a freeze on the assets of anyone facing an indictment?
Oh, not really, because it's really based on territorial sovereignty. So a freeze order is really within the power of the state party.
So anong sanction if found guilty?
Well, it's really imprisonment. That's the
Yes.
ultimate sanction. So there's no death penalty because the belief is that is the it's also a violation of the right to life. So imprisonment is the ultimate sanction.
Wow.
Okay. Now, very quickly, Attorney, run us by the fundamental charge in this case again. Uh, Crimes against humanity. I mean, we know the controversy over the war on drugs. We know all about the charges and the accusations and evidence of EJ case. But the government is arguing, this is in the course of a very bloody campaign. What exactly is the wording that makes it plausibly crimes against humanity?
Well, in the page in paragraph 189 of the OTP report, there's reasonable basis to believe crimes against humanity, and it's very specific. Crimes against humanity with respect to murder, to torture, and infliction of serious physical injury and mental harm. Because remember, crimes against humanity is widespread or systematic attack against the civilian population. And when we say widespread or systematic attack, there should be multiple events. So there should be multiple murders, multiple torture, multiple serious physical injury, and mental harm. And I think the open source information considered by the OTP includes those 5,300 deaths under the war on drugs with respect to police operations. So, in fact, it means that, in a sense, there's actually a pattern of a widespread or systematic attack as seen from these instances of extrajudicial killings, as well as the suffering that the suspects have undergone, whether they were in detention or under arrest. And with respect to physical injury and mental harm, these are also the effects of the killings on the victims' families. For example, they saw it themselves, how their fathers, their brothers were killed or mothers were killed. So that's the mental harm that it caused.
Okay. One quick question. Sorry, we're almost out of time. But one quick question. It said widespread and systematic. Magkahiwala yon. Now, I want to focus on the systematic. You're saying we can the ICC can theoretically build a case on systematic kahit hindi na overwhelmingly marami yung case na yan. They can theoretically prove systematic on a handful of cases, for example?
Yes, because when we say systematic, it means that there's actually first a policy. There's an official policy to commit this crimes against humanity. So we look at the official declarations of, for example, the chief executive. Secondly, is there a pattern that we can see? Is there a kill zone? Is there a kill time? Or are there really specific instances where state authorities are present during those extrajudicial killings? So it's really a determination of the pattern that will determine whether it's systematic.
Attorney, last na lang. What are the chances that this will end up being like the arbitral tribunal case of the Philippines where we won over China? What if the defense is uncooperative? How do you get around that?
Okay. Actually, it presupposes that there's even a conviction because in the arbitral ruling, we actually won. So it presupposes that there's a conviction. But if there's a conviction, meaning to say the ICC already took personal jurisdiction. All the indicted persons are already arrested and detained with the ICC. So the arbitral ruling scenario will never happen in this case. Why? Because in terms of the ICC, it first must have personal jurisdiction over the persons indicted before the trial can even start.
Okay. People will be watching these developments in the ICC, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. Attorney Gilbert Andres of CenterLaw, thank you for joining the Chiefs.
Thank you very much.
Salamat, Attorney.
God bless.
Okay, and before we end, we'd like to enjoin everyone to please watch the end of the year special of One News. It premieres on Sunday, December 20, 7:30 p.m. 1 year, 1 hour on One News. And that will be all for this special edition of the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News.